you're back in the smoke-filled room here in August as elections are really heating up. So we've got a ton to cover this week. And as a result, we've got people with all sorts of perspectives sharing their expertise on what's happening in Illinois politics. Let me make some introductions here. We have Chuck Weaver. He is the Peoria County Republican Central Committee Chairman. Many of you also know him as a state senator. He was a state senator in Illinois. Chuck, we're glad to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thanks. Really honored.
Also, Travis is your son, correct?
Yes, he is.
So Travis Weaver, if you watch our episodes, was on a few weeks ago. Now we've got Chuck. So as we've said in the past, we've got the OG on this episode, going to show us where all the talent comes from.
OG, so, you got it. I like it.
We're excited about that. Returning guest here, Collin Moseley, director of the Illinois Freedom Caucus, and somebody who makes us all annoyed by reminding us all that his kid slept through the night. His baby slept through the night after like day one. So we all hate him. Collin, good to have you.
Yeah, likewise, Collin. He's still sleeping all night.
How old is he now?
6.5 months.
Nice. Ours is at 4 months, and we're just excited he only wakes up once or twice a night. So yes. We'll take that. We also have Jim Thacker. He is a political consultant with a ton of expertise and experience located out of Rockford, Illinois. Jim, I'm glad to have you.
Thank you.
You've been involved in politics for several decades now, going back to even before the Manzullo days, right?
Yeah, I started 1983 working on campaigns.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're bringing wealth of knowledge to the episode. Thanks for being here. And as always, we have our political experts from Northern and Southern Illinois, Chris Jackowiak and Michael Butler. How's it going, guys?
All good.
Another day in paradise, Collin.
Did you guys get some sort of a memo here with like the navy blue polo shirt? Michael, is that a polo? I can't even tell. That shirt's so loud.
I'm pretty sure the shirt's black. I'm also colorblind, so what do I know?
Mine's like, navy blue.
Michael's wearing a shirt that's like, it's so loud. You only wear that if some girlfriend got that for you because it's so awful you wouldn't buy it for yourself. So, Michael, is there a girl who bought that shirt for you?
Nah, I got it on sale for like $20.
Well, I can tell you why it's on sale, but I guess that would take a little more time than we're ready for this week.
That's
all right,
true.
let's get into this, into our first topic. We've talked about this a lot in the past few weeks. We now get to talk about the fact that J.B. Pritzker has lost the Veep sweepstakes. He was clearly all in and was not successful. So we can talk about who the Veep is if you guys want, but more to the point, the focus is on the state of Illinois in this podcast. And so really it's about what's next. We've got Pritzker in 2026 is up. I've been on record several times saying I don't think he runs again, whether he gets the Veep position or not. Curious what you guys think. We also have Durbin in 2026. Is he going to run? Is he not going to run? There might be a whole new slate of candidates for Democrats in 2026. So I think this is a great chance to just open it up for everybody's thoughts on 2026 in general, starting with Pritzker on the way down. What do you guys think?
He played nice all the way through, and there'll be opportunities for him outside of Illinois. We'll see what happens there, and if not, I would assume he's running.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't close the door to your point, Chuck. Certainly, if Kamala Harris were to win, that would open up slots in D.C. for Pritzker. So this isn't the end of the whole process. We might still be losing our governor in a short period. So it's a fair point.
I think one of the things that's going to kind of be a little bit of a tell is what does Pritzker do over the course of the next 3 months? Because obviously, he had ambitions of, he was interested. If something happened to Biden, he was interested in maybe making a play for it. But obviously that didn't work out for him. Then his backup was, oh, well, I'm being vetted for VP. Maybe I can get that slot. So he kind of, tried to grease the skids for himself in that sense by, doing interviews. And we saw his contributions all over the country over the course of this past year or so. So now that he's basically been shut out of the president option, he's been shut out of the VP option. What does he do next? Does he still kind of dole out some of that cash, expecting that maybe he gets a VP or a cabinet slot or something of that nature? Or does he, kind of take a different approach and just hold on to his money because he's thinking he may need to use it in 2026 for one of these other either governor reelection or, a U.S. Senate race if Dick Durbin chooses not to. So that's what I would be paying attention to is what does Pritzker do with his money over the course of the next 90 days?
Good point.
I just think his ego is so big. He's going to have a hard time going from being the governor
to being one of 100 U.S. senators. I think he'd have to be a pretty high-level cabinet pick. His ego is just so large. I can't see him giving up being the top dog in Illinois for anything that's not a major cabinet post, or he may just bide his time and wait. That's my thought.
Kudos from getting through that whole thing and not making a fat joke. Jim, you were trying to jump in?
Yeah, the fat joke is, I think one of the reasons why he wasn't picked is because he is a literal fat cat. So I don't know that that's a good image for the Democrat Party. But with Pritzker, either way, his future and what he has in mind will be shown in the next 3 months, because if he's working hard for Kamala Harris, he was doing some surrogate speaking for Biden. If he continues that, that would help him network around the country. He's not that old, so he could even say, instead of 4 years, it could be, 8 years, but he's got lots of options. He's got, by the time in 4 years, whatever money he spends now, he'll make back in interest, probably in 1 year. So, the money I don't think is an issue for him. But either way, if Harris wins, he would have a lot of favors, that he could call up. If she loses, and he has that exposure across the country and is supporting candidates, that could help him run for president in 4 years. So
yeah, we've talked in the past. I think you made some good points, Jim. We've talked in the past on these podcasts about how JB Pritzker just doesn't fit the model of what Democrats are going to be looking for probably a very long time. I mean, wealthy, white, at this point, even Jewish. I mean, you see that that's played against Shapiro and Pritzker in this process. That one of the reasons why Walsh was chosen was simply because he was a little bit more moderate in his stance on that issue. I mean, there's a lot playing against Pritzker and his chances, just being white, male, rich, Jewish. I mean, it's just not a lot of things that are popular in the Democratic Party in 2024. And I don't know when those things ever will be popular in the Democratic Party again. So, it's to be able to be someone at the top of the ticket or one of the top 2 slots, I don't know that that's ever in the cards at this point. His cabinet position is probably his ceiling at this point.
Right.
Unless he's able to get through a Democratic primary, which I would agree with Collin that I don't think Pritzker is necessarily, is not who he is. It's not who he is to be one of 100 senators. But if he can leverage himself into Dick Durbin's Senate post and then run for president 2 years from then based off of that, that's going to be just 2 years of him sitting around in DC, not really doing much, and then maybe raising his profile a little bit. So that's really all the Senate position really does for him. But that's, his end goal here. His end goal is to run for president. Whether he wins, whether he loses, doesn't matter. He wants to run for president. And if the Senate appointment or Senate position is all it takes for him to get there, I think he takes it.
What does this mean for Illinois in 2026? I mean, you've got a governor who may or may not run. Chuck's position that he may run or will run is, not crazy. He's the governor now. Why wouldn't he run again? So I totally get that. But you've got at least some questions as to whether or not the governor will be at the top of the ticket for Democrats. There's a lot of questions over Durbin's future. There always is every 6 years, but it seems like this time, he keeps getting older. There's certainly a lot of questions over whether or not he runs. Seems like if either or both of them don't run, that's going to open up just a massive bloody primary process for Democrats and create opportunities for Republicans. So does all the latest developments increase opportunities for our side of the aisle in 2026?
I think it definitely does. I think, we've talked about it in the past about how Pritzker has kind of taken a turn towards being more aggressive and more some of his rhetoric has been a little nastier than it had been previously. And I think that opens him up to some liabilities in a general election that, look at how this guy's conducting himself, especially if we're able to get a candidate that, is seen as serious and like nose to the grindstone kind of person. I think that helps us build a contrast.
Well, candidate recruitment is the key, as you talked about. Chuck, I want to ask you, I know that's a big focus for you, is preparing that next generation of leaders on the Republican side, and we need to grow those future leaders. It doesn't matter how many openings Democrats give us in 2026 if we don't have good candidates on our side of the aisle. So what are your thoughts on that?
So when I got out of the Senate, I kind of focused on what's the place I can make the greatest impact. And my goal was to get 20 good leaders for Central Illinois. And it's working. It's working. I've got people in seats. This morning I got a text from a guy that commented he took a tough vote last night, got beat up on it, commented that he's glad he did it. It's about just how we grow people. And man, there are a lot of people want to get involved in politics. I counted my number this morning because I haven't looked at it for a while. My goal was 20 leaders, and I've got 144 in my program right now. There are a lot of people want to get involved in politics.
That's awesome. 144 is a pretty solid number for any region, let alone Central Illinois. That's excellent.
Great, thanks.
So, I mean, what do we go ahead, Chris?
Yeah, my big thing about the whole Senate race is if Durbin runs, Durbin doesn't run. I think the funny thing scenario that we could see, happening here is if JB puts it out there through back channels that he's interested in Durbin's Senate seat in 2026, I could easily see Dick Durbin running for re-election again just to smite Pritzker, because what a lot of people don't know is that, especially in the Republican Party don't know this, is that JB Pritzker and Dick Durbin have been basically at war for the past four or so years over control of the Democratic Party in the state. There's a Durbin factor, there's a faction, there's a Pritzker faction. So if JB makes it known to certain people that he wants Durbin's Senate seat, I could see Durbin be like, hey, screw it, I'm just going to run for re-election, win re-election. Maybe I ride out 6 years, maybe I resign halfway through or something like that. But just make sure that JB takes as long as possible to get to the presidency if Durbin really wants to smite him.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Who makes the appointment if Durbin steps down? Who's the official? Is that's
the governor?
If it's
That's
before
the
a certain
governor.
point, it'd be the governor, but before a certain point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
That's
got
always-
Wago in trouble, remember?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
I
this
just-
is a different perspective. If he was going to take a secretary position, I've never thought about this before. What prepares him best to run? You guys have a history on that, on where you've seen people come out of in different secretary positions?
which role? I mean,
Yeah.
Secretary
the-
of State.
Yeah, I mean, the
You
ones that
would
are the
think that'd be the
highest
first one.
profile, but I don't know that you make Pritzker your Secretary of State. You're probably throwing him in like Treasury, like you go from Penny Pritzker to JB Pritzker. That's an easy sort of pass along.
Well, he's
for
also
the
got to
Democrats.
think about, what helps him the most in a Democrat primary, because that's what he's got to get through. And maybe something like labor secretary, you're engaging with the unions a lot, and that's a big, part of that Democratic coalition in a primary. If he can, help them out, do some favors for them in that labor secretary position, maybe they're the first ones to write him some checks.
Yeah, I mean, even I remember some Democrats in the past have tried to get HHS because healthcare, abortion, all those issues kind of fit in that area. And obviously, Pritzker's big focus has been abortion, so it could be that too. I don't know. It's all speculative at this point, but
Could be the AG.
yeah, I mean, he could certainly try for that.
He's a lawyer. He is a lawyer.
So if his mission is to be president, though, that's a cabinet level position is not really historically. I'm trying to think of who went from a cabinet member to be president. Even
Thomas Jefferson.
Hoover,
okay,
Herbert Hoover.
That's
okay.
good.
Certainly not in modern history, I don't
That's
think.
a little while ago. So, and I think the last senator was it Kennedy?
Well, if
Oh,
you're
Obama.
discounting Obama, but
Well, yeah, but Obama's he's a phenomenon. He was
yeah,
that was a very it was a perfect storm for politics because the Republicans put us in a position where there was a lot of mistrust of government, and Obama painted himself as the outside guy, and he was there at the right time. So I
Yeah.
think he's an anomaly.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, it's fun to speculate, but I think the key is going to be making sure we're ready. 2026 looks like it's going to have some opportunities, that even more opportunities than we had in 2024, and we're going to have to be ready for that. And it starts at the local level. These 2025 elections are coming up. Candidates are passing petitions. If not right now, I think it's like in a week, right, Chris? I mean, we're right there at the when candidates start passing petitions for the consolidated elections in 2025. So we got to win these races in 24, but 25 and 26 are pretty much right there. They ain't that far away. So we're going to have to make sure we're ready. Let's talk about the just sort of the elections at large here. Democrats definitely have momentum with the switch to Kamala Harris, with her VP choice as they go into the convention in Chicago in a little bit over a week. Democrats have momentum, which we expected. Good news is election day isn't today, so it's not that big of a deal. The question is, will that momentum end? And if it does, when? Kind of an open question for everybody, but what do you guys think? I mean, it's the momentum on their side is pretty strong. It seems like on our side, the Trump campaign still trying to figure out what the contrast is with Harris and her ticket. We don't seem to have it yet. So when do you guys think this momentum train turns back in our favor? Because for several months we had all the momentum, and that seems to have stopped here in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think the momentum is going to continue through the convention. Obviously, they're going to get some good press off of that. I think one of the things that maybe is a factor that is yet to be seen is how smooth is their convention, because I think that there's a lot of opportunities for some infighting, protests, things of that nature that could, mitigate some of that and make their convention less successful. But I think once we get through that convention, I saw today that President Trump has agreed to 3 debates during the month of September. So we'll see which of those 3 that Kamala also agrees to. But I'd imagine we're probably going to have a number of those between now and the election, which I think provides some opportunities. And the attacks on Walsh since that announcement have really been relentless. And I think that it's very different than the attacks that we've seen on Vance, because I think the attacks that we're seeing on Walsh have been a lot more substantive. So we'll see which of those ends up sticks the most and, damages that ticket. But it's kind of interesting to see the level of focus on vice presidential candidates that we've had over the course of the past month, because you typically don't see that. Usually all the focus is on the president, but this time there's been a lot of duking it out over these VP candidates, which is
it was inevitable this election when you had the 2 oldest presidential nominees in history on both sides of the ticket. It was inevitable that we would be extra focused on the VP choices. So, but it's not a bad point, Michael. Chris, I know Michael seemed to have stolen your thunder on that.
Yeah, Butler took my point that I was going to make over the Democratic National Convention, because if it is a disaster, as I've been predicting for a number of months now, then that can completely suck the entire momentum out of the Democratic side of the aisle. Though I do think it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world that Democrats are peaking right now, because if you want your opposition to peak, you'd rather have them peak in the middle of August than having them peak like right before Election Day. So if it is really just the Republican side is really just waiting to get through the convention and then start, hammering the Harris-Walsh tickets, I think that's a pretty decent strategy. My only concern so far is that I disagree with Michael that there's been really substantive attacks on Governor Walsh. I don't see that at all. I think the best contrast we've seen so far has been the riots from 2020, but that isn't really most of what we've been seeing. We've been seeing a lot of stuff about stolen valor. We've been seeing a lot of stuff about, the tampons in the men's room, which is it's stuff, but I don't think it's stuff that really moves voters from voting for the Democratic ticket just because of these issues. So I think if the National Party and the Trump campaign is just using this time to plot out their contrast for the next, 2.5 months, then I'm good with it. If they're sitting on their hands and they have no idea what to do from right now, then I start being a little bit concerned. But all that could change with the convention. I think it's moving back.
I think the Kamala Harris bump is largely due to the fact that she's not Joe Biden.
Right.
Democrats were there. They were very upset and worried, as Biden tried to stay in there. And once he got out, they were elated, that someone else was in there. And she's just a warm body for now. When, the issues start coming out, which is obviously that's the not secret weapon. It's the weapon that the Trump campaign has, because it's certainly not Donald Trump's personality. That's not going to be real helpful. But it's his position on the issues. So, if Republicans want to win state and nationally, we've got to focus on the differences between our views and their views. And there's a world of difference.
Well, yeah, you've got, Kamala Harris very well may be the most progressive nominee in the history of national politics.
Absolutely.
And you've got her VP choice. She had the option to go with, more moderate options like the Pennsylvania governor, which politically many people agree would probably have been smarter. And she chose the liberal progressive dean of the Midwestern Caucus instead. So, I mean, this is an incredibly progressive ticket. So, and every time we poll, and we've talked about this in the past, we've done a lot of polling across the country, and every poll we do, you see that the voters are with us, as in Republicans, on 7, if not 8 of the top 10 issues, compared to progressives like Kamala Harris. So I definitely think if we can make this not about personalities, because if this is a race about Trump and Trump's personality, we might struggle. But if this is a race about which party has the best vision for this country and which party would be best for working families, then Republicans are going to be in a real good spot.
Well, and I think another thing that may end up, she's been like the presumptive nominee for 17, 18 days now. She hasn't done a single interview. She's done rallies and, private events, but she hasn't taken any questions from the press, no press conference. When she gets off the plane, she tries to run into the airport as fast as she can because she doesn't want to talk to the press on the runway. And that can only last for so long. And I think once she starts doing some of these interviews and reporters ask her tough questions, we saw how she did with that in 2019, not very well. And you can't say that, Trump and Vance are avoiding questions. Trump did an hour-long press conference today and took tough questions, and she's not doing that. So eventually that chicken's going to come home to roost.
Yeah, I mean, you can only protect the Democrats clearly didn't learn their lesson with Biden. You can only create this public image and keep it perfectly clean for so long until eventually it cracks apart. And they're trying to do that with Harris, right? Keep everything perfect, build out this image for her, pay TikTok influencers to do videos saying how amazing she is, roll her out at the convention with a nice little, pretty little bow. But that doesn't last till November. You cannot keep the charade up all the way through November. And that's the risk that they're running here is, at some point as cracks start to show, can they handle that? And we're going to find out.
Well, I don't know how long you can keep it up. I mean, I'm really disappointed what they really understand about what's going on. I mean, our media is terrible, but I think it's just as much about how do you present the cracks. I think a lot of it's going to come down to how the debate will go between the two, and will Trump have the self-discipline to manage it well. I think he's got the ability to manage it well. We have the self-discipline, and how do those two position themselves in that? Can he put her in the proper box is what I'm interested in seeing.
Well, the Dems should just put Hunter Biden on the payroll because he's an expert at crack, so he could probably handle the crack situation pretty well.
Funny, yeah.
Bam! I got a one-liner in there. All right, let's keep moving a little.
Good.
Let's move to our next one here. I'm curious kind of how people are going to feel about this. Obviously, we're all focused on November, but we've got some people that are maybe making it not as easy for us to win in November. So I'm really curious how our 5 experts today will feel about this topic. But in the last week plus, Democrats have unveiled their Republicans for Harris coalition. And there are 3 names especially that I want to point to: Governor Jim Edgar, former Governor Jim Edgar, former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, and former Congressman and talk show host Joe Walsh are headlining this Republicans for Harris. I, of course, have thoughts because I always have thoughts, but I want to shut up, and I'm just curious what you guys think about this. Is it a nothing burger? Whatever, these guys are irrelevant, or is it this hurts us? These guys shouldn't be doing this. What do you guys think?
I think it's a whole package of all kinds of things. But, the ultimate message here is that if you're going to endorse Kamala Harris, you are not a Republican. If you're going to endorse a San Francisco liberal communist that gave us open borders, crippling inflation, a disastrous economy, and left Afghanistan embarrassingly, and you endorse that, I don't care who the nominee is. You don't have to vote for our nominee, but to endorse Kamala Harris it's embarrassing. But the good thing is it's not even embarrassing for me as a Republican because I don't consider them to be Republicans anymore. And if I can add one more thing to that is, I know that Jim Edgar is just fighting for relevance. And so is, Adam Kinzinger and these other communists. But, I feel pretty strongly about the fact that things need to come to a head at some point with the Edgar Fellowship. We should not have Republicans aligning with someone who endorses Kamala Harris. But ultimately, I think it's not going to me, I don't think it moves the needle with regular everyday people Probably they don't care what Jim Edgar says, some 20-year governor from 20 years ago. But to the Republicans, don't be influenced by these people because they're worthless if they support Kamala Harris.
I don't think that it necessarily matters in terms of the names who are, endorsing, because nobody cares what Jim Edgar thinks. Nobody cares what Ann Kinzinger thinks. Nobody's cared what Joe Walsh had to say for like 12 years, but I have no idea how Joe Walsh went down this path. Wasn't he like a Tea Party conservative at some point? Doesn't make any sense to me. What it could matter a little bit if they actually utilized this and messaged it properly was basically just show, hey, look at all these Republicans who are jumping off the Trump train because Trump's a dictator, insurrectionist, all this stuff. You haven't really seen that much. A good way to combat this if there was such thing as Democrats for Trump, but there isn't. The Democrats who with some support of Trump, are out of politics for the last 30 years, or they're not willing to do so for whatever reason. So I don't think we can do that on our side of the aisle. But I mean, Colin's 100% right. It's like, why are you endorsed? Well, if you were just saying I'm not voting for Trump, I'm going to write in George H.W. Bush or George W. Bush or something like that as a protest, like, great, good for you, man, whatever. But if you're going to endorse like an actual like progressive leftist, you were never a conservative to begin with, and you have no principles. So
any Republican or so-called Republican that comes out and says that they are part of Republicans for Harris, to me, they're the equivalent of Jane Fonda sitting behind the anti-aircraft gun in Vietnam in the height of the war. They're being used for propaganda. So the whole issue is to say, gee, see how disgusted people are with Trump, that actually Republicans are supporting Harris. But to Collin Moseley's point, they're not Republicans. I mean, it's again, if you get back to the issues, there's no way that they could be in alignment with Kamala Harris on the issues. It doesn't even make any sense at all.
Well, I think this is like slightly less so with Edgar compared to Kinzinger and Walsh, but they have made like their personality and their brand like, hey, we are Republicans that do not like Trump. And, that runway, we're approaching the end of that runway, right? If President Trump beats Kamala Harris in November, he'll be president for 4 more years. And then that's the end of it, right? Then what do they do next? I mean, they've tarnished their reputation with all Republicans. I think it's just, they think, hey, maybe I can get another 3 or 4 years out of this. Maybe I can get on MSNBC, sell a couple books. All the liberals will pat me on the back, but eventually they're going to come to the realization this was a fool's errand and that they're not going to have anything to show for this.
Right. Well, and it hurts. And I think Ray LaHood's on that list too. And to me, the other thing too, just as you peel back the layers of the onion, don't we want the rest of our ticket to win too? If you have Republicans that are bashing the top of your own ticket, how can we continue to try to motivate voters to turn out for the down ticket races? We need to flip seats in the House and Senate. And I firmly believe that people are trying to do that, working really hard. We have to have people motivated to go out and hit the ballot boxes. And, I think these people, on top of their hatred for Trump, are also now contributing to this voter apathy of everybody hates everybody. They all hate each other. Why even vote?
I mean, if this was about better government and we need better elected officials, and obviously there are things that you can criticize Trump on, like regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. But I think if this was about better government, these individuals will be focused on getting good Republicans elected to office at the Senate level, at Congress, state rep, state Senate, things like that. Let's build a bench. So 4 years from now, 8 years from now, we have candidates that, they can support and, advocate for. But instead, this is very ego driven and it's, hey, I need some attention. Can people talk about me? And I think you can see that in how they've conducted themselves.
Well, I think you've got a difference between these three here, in that like or dislike what they've done here. There's a difference between what Joe Walsh is doing here and maybe what Jim Edgar is doing here. Meaning, I disagree with what they've done. Let me make it clear. But Joe's doing this for the publicity. Joe is absolutely doing this for publicity and relevance. Kinzinger believes this and is doing it for relevance. Again, I hate that I'm slightly defending Jim Edgar. He's not doing this for relevance. Jim Edgar actually does believe this. And so I just want to be at least fair before I kind of whack all of them together. So that's my moment of fairness. But in truth, Collin the Lesser, I agree, which that's going to be my new nickname for you, buddy. But the other Collin on this episode, exactly where I'm coming from with this, which is down ballot races. If you call yourself a Republican leader, if you care about the Republican Party, all this does is hurt us down ticket. You can say I'm against Trump. You can say all you want about, it can't be Trump. Trump's bad for our party. If you believe that, then you know what? First Amendment rights, feel free to come out and say it. But to come out and endorse the most progressive nominee in the history of presidential politics, to come out and work actively to raise money. I mean, remember when Kinzinger endorsed Biden, they put out a text message trying to raise money on behalf of the Biden-Harris ticket at the time. I mean, that's where it's a difference between saying, hey, listen, I'm going to stand on principle, and on principle, I don't believe that Donald Trump should be president. If that's your position, fine. You're welcome to have that position and voice it. But at the end of the day, to actually go out and endorse the other side, raise money for the other side, heck, let's assume there's going to be commercials for the other side, because that's usually what happens. Like, now you are actively hurting every other Republican on the ticket instead of actually helping the Republicans that are down ballot. And so that's my beef with this. I don't have a beef with them being against Trump. That's their right. It's going out and actually hurting our party when we're several months away from an election where we got to win seats, especially in a state like Illinois, where we need to pick up ground in the legislature. We need to start gaining ground back in these suburban counties. And this is absolutely going to hurt that. It's not going to help that.
I got a couple of thoughts. Chris, you said it. Why would Joe Walsh do it? And people say to me all the time, I don't understand why people just did this. I think we all know very simply why people do it. They've sold out for personal gain, and that's just what it's all about. And that's what's wrong with politics. I agree with you, Collin, that all you have to do is just not vote for Donald Trump. If you disagree, it's that simple. But I probably have this conversation once a month with people, and they say I vote for the man. And I think that's the dumbest thing you can do, is vote for the man, because in the end, the man's going to do, or the woman's going to do what the party believes in. And this is a vote for progressive ideals, which supposedly these guys were opposed to previously. And regardless whether you like or don't like Donald Trump, the reality is and I'm not even saying he believes some of the things he does with regard to a more conservative issue, socially or whatever. I don't know if he really believes them, but he's doing them. And I'm going to vote down, party line myself.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, it's about, we're in a general election. Like, Collin is well aware of, in the past, I haven't made the most positive statements about Darren Bailey, but when he was our nominee for governor, I held back 99% of the things I wanted to say during that, because he was our nominee and we had to come together as a party. At this point, would I have preferred a different nominee? I've been on record. I would have preferred a different nominee for the Republican Party. But at this point, this is our nominee. This is it. It's either the most progressive president in the history of America, or it's Donald Trump. Those are your two options. And so again, when you're in this final stretch of an election, when it becomes a binary choice, the math changes. And that is my biggest point of you wanted to say this a year ago, fine. 6 months ago, fine. But right now we are in the sprint, and you have two choices. The president will either be Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. That's it. That's the reality of where we are right now.
So
what you're voting for is policy, not people.
And to Chuck's point, this isn't 2016, where Donald Trump, they could throw all kinds of bombs at him about it, his personality and what he may or may not do. But in fact, we have a 4-year record of what Trump can do in terms of policy. And, basically, if you look at the world and Trump's ability to, keep the wars tamped down and all of that, I think if they play out that record, then his personality doesn't matter anymore. He's still the same guy he was in 2016, but he has a proven record, and he's got a record that he can compare to Kamala Harris / Biden. The two of them are tied.
Do you guys think he's improved his personality?
No.
No.
I mean,
he's-
listen, if we got the Donald Trump in the first 15, 20 minutes of his RNC speech, if that was the candidate that we got for the next however many months,
You're right. You're right.
this race would be over. But Donald
Self-discipline's
Trump is still
temporary.
Donald Trump. That's the last hour of the speech reminded us that he has not changed.
Yeah, he
I-
doesn't
I-
want to be called Sleepy Donald, so he's going to
Yeah,
keep
funny.
personality.
I just wish
Yes.
we had 2016 Trump back, Colin. Like I look back at some of Donald Trump's 2016 debate highlights, over the past few months, just to remind myself how great things were at one point. If we had that Donald Trump, this race would be over. But we don't.
Oh,
We
we'll
have an
see.
older.
I mean, it could be. I mean, you and I talked about it previously. We both think that he was holding his punches for a reason because they wanted Biden still in. So it doesn't mean that Trump is gone. We're going to have 3 chances in September to find out if that Trump is going to come back. But let me just close with this to close it, to loop this topic. If these Republicans had come out and said, we don't think either presidential choice is acceptable, and so therefore we're refusing to endorse either, I would have had so much respect for them. Again, I mean, it may or may not agree with their position, but that would have been, okay, you're standing on principle, but you're not going to go endorse the progressive. That is, I think, the point here is you didn't just say it could be neither or it can't be Trump. You literally went out and endorsed Harris. That, I think, is what takes us from, okay, I respect that you're standing on principle, to what the heck are you doing right now? But let's move on because we got lots of topics to go to.
Hey, can I go back on something? Can I go back on something Michael said about the Democrat convention being a mess? And I think there's 2 parts there. One of them's inside the building, one of them's outside the building. And you guys live this more than I do. But I mean, I think outside the building is going to be a disaster for them. But inside the building, do you really think there's that much controversy is going to be happening?
No, the controversy is all going to be outside,
Yeah, I think so too.
which is partially why it's not Shapiro or Pritzker on the ticket, because they're so worried about that controversy outside the DNC. They had to go with somebody who was still a Midwestern governor, but who wasn't as pro-Israel as Pritzker and Shapiro have been. So to that point.
So
All right, let's Jim, I'm so sorry. Because I want to get to, and
Sure.
we're coming up to your topic here. I have a feeling you and even Chuck are going to have a lot more to say about this than any of our previous guests. So I purposely held this the last couple of weeks because I was pumped we'd have you guys with us. Let's talk about Joe McGraw in aisle 17. A few weeks ago, he was added to the Young Gun program. Seems like his campaign's starting to gain momentum. There are others who are out there in the last couple of weeks who are kind of saying the opposite. I'm curious what you guys are seeing on the ground. Jim, I know you've had some involvement with the campaign. Curious what you guys think on where is McGraw headed here. Obviously, getting added to the Young Gun program is not a small deal. Democrats admitting that this is their most vulnerable district in the state. Again, not a little deal here. And McGraw's raised a good amount of money. For a challenger to raise almost $1 million in a state like Illinois that's not really in play nationally is not a small deal here. So, I mean, there are signs of some momentum behind McGraw. What are you guys seeing?
Go ahead, Jim.
So just full disclosure. So I'm on Joe's campaign team. And Joe's a good friend of mine. So I'm not going to say any bad things. Just kidding. So Joe McGraw is like one of the best candidates that we've had in a long time. And the thing about Joe is that he's inspired a lot of support at the local level. Because, and I've experienced this over the years. I've worked on a lot of congressional campaigns, and a lot of Republicans, a lot of independent or Republican-leaning independents, they get fired up about the federal issues. So, they see in Joe McGraw potential to win a seat. It has national implications. And that's the reason why the Young Guns are getting involved. And that's the reason why, he has the full support of NRCC and all of the elected officials out in Republican leadership in DC, because they see this as a win, a potential win. So, having said that, that obviously is going to help all of the candidates, who have a piece of that district and are running in that district, because it's going to fire up the turnout. And when I say national implications, I mean literally. I mean, we don't have that much of a margin for error, nationally. So Joe could very well, be one of the deciding votes when it comes to picking a speaker.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
so oh, go ahead,
but-
Chuck, and then I have a question for you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, I've gotten to know him fairly well. He's been to my place here. Every time I call him, he shows up for events. He calls us regularly. He picks up the phone when you call him. Jim, you can brag on Eric. I think he's doing a great job. Eric Page.
He
for him
really
down
is,
in
yeah.
Peoria.
Yeah.
But I got a call from Eric a couple days ago. What churches can I connect him to? He's working really hard. He speaks well. I think he continues to get better at speaking. He presents himself extremely well, just as a first appearance. So I think he's got a lot of things it takes to be able to win.
So my question to you guys is this: based
Very
on
good.
the sort of the negativity we've seen over the last couple of weeks, two things are clear to me. One is a little bit of it is sour grapes. It's coming through here from some of those unnamed sources who they had other choices that they wanted to either run or be in the primary, and I respect that. Joe was not the first choice of the party, or the second, or the third, or the fourth choice, but he is the nominee. So that's the reality. He's our candidate now going into the general election. So I can look past all of that. It does seem like they have a little bit of a decent point, and I want to ask you guys about this on two things. One, the message. It definitely seems like the message here is what I've seen in a lot of other districts, which, talking about, sorry, Michael, but talking about, tampons in boys' bathrooms is not, going to win this election here. And so there's some concern about the messaging. And then there's concern about building up the contrast with the incumbent. That is, there a strong enough contrast, a strong enough campaign to let voters know why they need to fire the incumbent. Sometimes that comes later, though. So maybe it's a strategic choice to bring that out maybe closer to Labor Day. So I don't know. I'm on the outside. I'm not involved with the race. But what do you guys say to those two things? The people are concerned about the message here, and people are concerned about not building up a strong enough contrast to show voters why Sorensen needs to be fired in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know that the real message is out enough and broad enough. I don't know that. So maybe you're seeing more things than I am. You're right, though. You don't, with an incumbent, you've got to have clarity on the distinction, and he may not be getting that done. It's a good question. I have to think about that. Yeah,
listen, and I think I've proven I'm cheerleading the Republican Party here. I want my candidates all to win in November. So it's a genuine question, and in hopes that that those people who have those concerns are wrong, and that these things are better than people realize, and or hey, just wait, guys, it's getting rolled out in a couple weeks, and you'll see it. I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Traditionally and typically, especially with a congressional campaign, these things don't begin in earnest until after Labor Day. Largely due to the fact that it costs a lot of money, to run TV ads and do all the things that you have to do to get that message out. Joe did some polling. They released some top lines on that polling. It showed that he was within striking distance of Sorensen. Sorensen was under 50%, which that's never good for an incumbent. But the key is that they also did the follow-up, where you basically explain the differences on the issues between the two candidates. And when you do that, Joe passes Sorensen, and Sorensen drops in his numbers. And so, as a targeted race, once this thing begins, the people are going to be seeing commercials all the time, for 2 months. Yeah, I mean, it's just that's just a fact. Everybody starts, weighing in on this, and then, that's when you have an actual narrative, and then you have some contrasts that come out between the candidates. Right now it's a lot of building organization, things like that. And by the way, Joe has like a couple thousand volunteers now. He's got a lot of people. Like I say, they're fired up because, again, they love the federal issues, but they also know how important, this seat is to the whole picture across the country.
Yeah, well, just so you guys know, Lane always brings up the district map in post for our viewers, so they'll be able to see that map. And I think one of the things you just talked about, Jim, that's a big deal that really needs to be focused on is the way this map is drawn. This is the kind of thing where grassroots are going to be huge for a race like this, because you're in multiple media markets. It is not a contiguous district, which is a different conversation with fair maps. But this is not the kind of district where it's going to be won or lost maybe in the airwaves, though that's of course very important to your point, Jim. It's really going to be grassroots are going to play a big role here. So I'm heartened to hear about the volunteers, and I'm really hopeful in a month or so we're talking about how Joe's translating momentum into votes. So we'll be watching it really closely.
And one quick thing. So just and keep in mind, you've got the Rockford media market, the Quad Cities, and Peoria. And they all each have a pretty wide, radius. So even though the district is configured as it is, you pretty much have the district covered in terms of the commercials. I remember running ads for campaigns like in the suburbs, like a congressional campaign. And my aunt called me from Indiana and she said, "Hey, I saw your commercial for Canada." And, and that's what happens is, there'd be there's going to be, because of the way the map is drawn, there'll be a lot of people who the commercials won't mean anything to them, but we're going to have the coverage.
Yeah.
If you have the money, we have the money to cover it well in those 3 markets.
Well, Joe is raising money, and as is the case in all these races, there's all kinds of other groups nationally that start running commercials and things like that. I was involved in a suburban campaign. This was 2006, and they ended up spending like $8 million on each side. So, and the Rockford media market is actually, put TV. We put TV ads up for county candidates out there because it's pretty reasonable. And they have, the entire gamut of network television.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is having 3 media markets to work with, but to your point, they are less expensive media markets. So hopefully McGraw keeps the pedal to the metal on fundraising over the remainder of the summer here, and we'll keep watching it and keep looking for Joe to pull that one off. That'd be huge. Speaking of candidates and candidates who are ramping up or need to ramp up or just are tone deaf completely, Michael, we're going to you with this one. Michael and I both saw a Facebook post by Katie Stuart in House District 112 this week, just a couple days ago, where she said she was excited to kick off her re-election campaign in the first week of August. Katie Stuart in a Tier 1 House District is kicking off her campaign. Michael, how tone deaf is that? And how happy is the Kevin campaign for just how behind Katie Stuart is in that race?
Well, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when the fundraising numbers came out that, obviously Katie's got a lot of cash on hand from, previous elections, and she's got a little bit of a war chest, but she only raised $6,000 last quarter, and she spent like around $5,500. So she burnt through all of the money that she raised.
Wow.
Where on the other hand, Jay Keevan had raised about $26,000 in that same quarter. So Keevan's had his foot to the pedal. He's not letting up. They've knocked close to 10,000 doors already. And like you had mentioned, Katie Stuart just decided to kick off her campaign this week. My guess, and obviously this is just speculation, is that they just believe their own bullshit. And they were like, oh, we're not going to have an opponent. He's not going to be on the ballot. Like we passed this law, like the courts will throw him off or their state board will throw him off. So I think that they were just overly optimistic on the possibility that they weren't even going to have an opponent at all. And then they finally realized, like, hey, this guy's going to be on the ballot. Maybe we should do something.
Yeah, I mean,
how's that district breakout? How's that district breakout? R versus D.
Do you remember what our numbers showed, Collin? It was pretty tight, wasn't it?
I usually go into these episodes with my spreadsheet open, but I don't have it open. So give me a second.
I can testify. I can remember off the top of my head. Trump won the district in 2016 and lost it in 2020. So if you want just top line presidential numbers, that's what.
Wow.
He lost it by 2, though. It wasn't very much, right?
Right. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot, but it was a Trump. He barely won it in 2016 and then barely lost it in 2020. So it's even with Trump on the ticket, it should be a swing.
Yeah, I got the numbers so we can stop speculating. So we've got our baseline of this is it's R plus 0.03. So basically break even.
Oh, wow.
You've got Trump lost it by 6. You've got in 2018, which I like going back to that election, Republicans lost it by almost 11. Chris hates it when I say this, but Chris hates this when I say it, but Progressive Tax Campaign lost by 18. So there's definitely fiscal conservatives in that district, and locally Republicans do pretty well. So it is absolutely a district that's in play.
Winnable.
It's probably roughly
Yeah.
third or fourth in the list of our best pickup opportunities in the House. It's not the top, but it's definitely in the top 3, 4, 5, right up there as great opportunities. And Stuart just kicking off her campaign, not raising money. And let's be clear, she kicked it off with a cheap Facebook post asking if some people wanted yard signs. It wasn't like she had a big event. They went out and knocked on doors. It was just, hey, do people want some yard signs? Like, they are absolutely behind the 8 ball on the Democratic side in that district.
Can she
if
get
you want-
special interest money fast?
Oh yeah, she will. And I mean, we all understand this, that most of the money in this race is going to come from outside of the two candidates. Neither, it's great to see Jay raising, $25K, but that's pennies compared to what both sides from the outside will spend on that district. So that's really, everyone's going to come in and spend buku bucks. But here, if the Democrats are going to spend in that region a ton to try to get LaToya Greenwood back in office, they're not going to have as much to try to save Katie Stewart's butt. So, the question will be, how many places can they spend their money? They have a lot of it, but at a certain point, you start to spend it here instead of spending it there.
I know that Keevan had a goal of raising a little around $100,000, over the course of his campaign. And there's promises of money that are, out there if he accomplishes that goal. So I could see, half $500,000 probably spent on this on the Keevan side.
Yeah. So Collin, since you like bringing up referendum so much, the Workers' Rights Amendment won to 112th by 22 points.
Yeah, there
So,
you go. I mean,
22 points.
At,
how much did the progressive tax lose by? What'd you say, 17?
17, 18. I don't have it up anymore.
All right. So
18,
let's stop talking about referendums when we're talking about district races.
Either way, though, this is absolutely a district that, if we're going to in any way crawl back to relevance in Springfield, this is a district we have to win. So it's heartening to see, we always talk high level. Look, how are Republicans doing high level, Democrats doing high level? But at a certain point, it comes down to candidate performance. And you need your candidates out there working. You need them doing stuff. And right now I'm seeing great signs by Republican candidates knocking on doors and working their butts off. And in most of our targeted districts, there's a few we're lagging, unfortunately, but in most of them we're doing really well out there, working hard. And in comparison, you don't see Democrats working as hard. To Chris, what I'm about to say will make Chris very happy. This would not have flown under Mike Madigan. A candidate, Katie Stewart, announcing in August that they're kicking off their race. Mike Madigan would have just kicked her out of the dang party and said, "You're out. You're on your own." Like, this stuff would not have flown in previous regimes. And again, you sort of play for your opponent to be as good as possible, and then you smile when they don't play the game right. And if Katie Stewart's gonna be a weak candidate, all the better for us, because I know LaToya Greenwood, there are concerns with Democrats that she's not out working as hard as she should. In some of these key races for Democrats, their candidates are not lighting the world on fire.
Good.
Yeah, I
All
think
right,
that. Sorry, Collin. Just one quick thought on that, which is this. I mean, talking about this earlier, every step that we can make to exploit their weaknesses, we have to in the situations that we're in. If Katie Stewart's going to decide that she wants to, suddenly start working in August, I mean, Jay Keevan and his team, I have seen them working all the time. I can't tell you, Michael Butler's knocking doors for Jay Keevan, I think, every night and day. And so, it's heartening to see that, because our situation, we have to work double time to beat these guys. And so when they're slipping, we need to just capitalize on it every step of the way and make up ground.
100%. All right. This is a pretty local issue, so we won't spend a ton of time on it. But Chris, you never get to talk about Will County, and there is significant news in Will County that actually might change some of the electoral prospects in the county. What's going on?
Collin, just as I was about to get back on a normal sleep schedule, try and get my 7-8 hours a night, the Will County Clerk decides to resign, which triggers not a special election, but an election to fill out the vacancy. So Lauren Staley Ferry, the Will County Clerk, is resigning. The word on the street is she's taking another job, and that doesn't overlap with being Will County Clerk anymore. So that opens up the position to go for the ballot for 2 more years, which means that the Republicans are finding a candidate, the Democrats are finding a candidate. Look, Will County, double collar counties. You have disaster cases like DuPage. You have unfortunate cases like Lake County. And then you got Will County, which everyone kind of forgets Will County exists, which is more in play than either DuPage or Lake is. But because we don't have like big bucks in Will County, people don't really devote as much time or resources to it. So Will County's been a back and forth battle between the Republicans and Democrats in a number of cycles now. Republicans used to control almost the entire county. No longer Democrats control countywide offices except one. So this will be a good opportunity for Republicans to take the county clerk's office because it's very difficult to lose a clerk's race once you're in a position because the county clerk's name is on every ballot. It's on every piece of mail that the county sends out. So it's a good, if the Republicans can take the county clerk's office, it's going to be a good thing. The Will County Republicans are taking this race seriously. I'm taking this race seriously. So Will County Democrats who love watching this show, beware because I'm coming for you.
Well, and honestly, so Chris, there's a large portion. I don't want to word this incorrectly. Let me try this again. There is a significant number of people involved with the Republican Party and or conservative politics who are focused on election security, election fraud, election-related issues. And I've said from day one, if you really care about those things, there's two things you can do to really change it. Become an election judge and elect good clerks. Those are the two biggest things you can do. And so to the people who are really focused on election security in the state of Illinois, I will call their attention to the fact that the county clerk position in Will County is now open for this November. It is now going to be a race. And if you really, I don't care if you live in Will County or not. If you care about election security, you need to be involved. You need to come up there and donate to the Republican candidate, support the Republican candidate, knock on doors for the Republican candidate, because Democrats look at clerk's offices as golden opportunities for patronage and anything else that they want to do in those offices. And so if we can retake that position, it will have a significant impact on Will County politics. That position alone, if we could take that, could make a huge change in the coming 2 and 4 years in Will County. So for the people in the Republican Party across this state who really care about election security, give Chris a call. I'm joking when I say this. Lane will flash Chris's cell phone number up on screen. No, but reach out to the Will County Republican Party and see what you can do to help in that race, because it will have a big impact on Will County politics.
Yeah, I'll make one final point here, Collin. I've been involved in Will County politics going on 4 years now, and I don't think there's been a single central committee meeting or even township meeting I've been to where the talk of poll watchers, election judges, and ballot integrity hasn't came up. So if you're one of those people who genuinely cares and genuinely wants to do something, let's, all those things are important. Election judges are important. Poll watchers are important. Don't disagree. But let's take some time, knock on some doors, donate some money. Let's actually make a play for this Will County Clerk's office, because we don't want to be the Republican Party who lucked into a open election in the November election and then didn't take it seriously. So let's take this seriously. Whoever the candidate might be on the other side, doesn't matter. Take it seriously. Let's go out and win one for a change, guys. Come on.
Especially in a county where Trump doesn't kill us. I mean, Lake County, DuPage County, Cook County, and especially in the northern regions, the top of our ticket's going to hurt some of our candidates, but he doesn't kill us in Will County. So this is a chance for a targeted win in 2024. We can't waste it. All right, let's go to this. We're talking about, down ballot races. Democrats have publicly announced, and I word it that way for a reason, they have publicly announced an effort to recruit down ballot candidates in 2025, issued a press release. They've been in the news for this. Their County Chairs Association and the Democratic Party of Illinois are partnering on a statewide candidate recruitment and training program to build a bench specifically to help these candidates run in local offices. I kind of chuckle because in their press release, they list county offices, but county offices aren't actually even up in 2025, but whatever. They are doing a significant effort statewide. A couple of reasons why we got to talk about this. One, because Republicans really need to catch up in this area. We should be training and we're preparing candidates. I'm sure Chuck will agree with that. Though it sounds like at the local level, Chuck's already doing that in his region. But this is something we are absolutely behind on as a party, number one. But number two, I'm old enough to remember, and I know I'm young, I'm old enough to remember when the media gave Republicans a hard time when we went out there and recruited some candidates to run for office. And when conservative groups went out there and recruited candidates for school board races, the media had front page stories about how this was completely inappropriate. Now Democrats issue a press release. They're not even trying to hide it. And there's no outcry over this is inappropriate from the media, which I think is not surprising, but completely hypocritical. Either way, though, this is going to be a big push by Democrats. And as I already said before, petitions are starting to be passed for local office because of the election integrity bill that was passed down in Springfield. The petition process is now a month earlier. And so we are already in petition season for 2025. And so while we
I've got to tell you, I've been aggressively recruited by the Democrats, in a text message I get about every 3 months, but they think I'm Jennifer.
There you go. Yep.
I'm Jennifer, and I keep that text coming because I like to know what they're thinking. So
I got a few friends who are on that list, and the name is always wrong, and it's usually a female, and they've always got it wrong. So yeah, that list is awful that they use.
So I'm getting recruited.
Yeah, but let me open it up to discussion. I mean, this is a big focus, and again, we can't lose focus on winning in 2024. But the petition deadline for filing to run for office, because they've moved it up, now ends right around election day, which means you don't have the opportunity to say, let's finish this election and now let's see who we want to run for 2025. The filing deadline will be over at that point. And so we have to chew gum and walk at the same time here and run good candidates for 2025. So I hate that we got to talk about it now, but we got to talk about it now. So let me open it up to everybody's thoughts on this topic.
So I get involved in a lot of races in the municipal elections. And probably one of the most frustrating parts is the data, because there's no support from the Republican Party at all in terms of data. They don't have the districts broken down, or they don't have proper lists. What I've been doing is we purchase our data directly, like from L2 out of California, and they actually have school board districts and things like that laid out, where, typically in the past, we just take the old GOP data center and we'd have to almost hand carve out, the names. And yeah, I agree. The GOP data center is junk. I'm listed on there as 58-year-old African-American, but they fixed it this time. But in previous cycles, that's how I was listed. So, and I've got all kinds of anecdotal information about how bad that data has been in the past. Hopefully they've fixed some of those bugs, but yeah, they should invest in, a good database for the entire state, so that even if they provided that kind of support to local candidates, it'd be helpful, but they provide nothing.
Yeah. I want to piggyback on that, if you don't mind, for just a second. So we're using Cirrus in Peoria. I don't know how many of you guys are that close to them looking, and we're getting everything we need for breakouts. I mean, I worked with Ian this morning. I needed one city council district. I need names for everybody. They're doing a great job for us. And as long as we eat our own with our leadership and the party, they don't have time to manage stuff. These guys are fighting to survive. And I've told people that say, why do you use Cirrus? Well, Barrett doesn't have to answer to anybody. He just says, here's what we got to do. And he goes and does it. Don Tracy didn't have that luxury. And until we figure out, we got to quit beating up on our own people. And whether you love Don or don't love Don, I mean, we've got to figure out how we're going to support Ms. Salvi now and move on, because she's got a job to do. And if we're beating her up, she can't go out and get affected by what you're talking about, Jim. How do we get the right materials to people?
Right.
Yeah. And listen, we've said in the past, and the party is not set up to be able to do this kind of a thing. They don't have the staff. They don't have the resources. So this is not to attack the party. They're just trying to keep the lights on. They're doing the best they can with a tiny staff. So this is not to attack the party. It is simply to say this is a need. We absolutely need to do a better job of this, because who's your future state rep candidate? It's the mayor or the school board member or the library board member or the township supervisor or trustee. Those are our future candidates for state legislature, for Congress. Democrats do a great job of this, and we're always scrambling. We're always, hoping that, hey, did somebody decide to put their own name on the ballot, rather than going out there and recruiting them and then training them. Obviously, I'm a big guy on training because I do trainings across the country for conservative candidates. We're always behind on that in the state of Illinois. There are opportunities to get trainings out here for free. And then usually, because of that infighting that Chuck is talking about, we never get to have those trainings. I just did a training this past weekend in the city of Chicago, which hasn't happened in a long time because of infighting. But thank God they were able to put one together and say, forget it, enough infighting. Let's do a training for our candidates. We just got to stop fighting each other and say, let's recruit, let's train, and let's prepare these candidates so we can get them elected at the local level. Because if we don't, you want to say you want to turn things around. We can't keep just crossing our fingers and hope we win the governor's mansion. We got to actually start winning some of these local elections.
Yeah, my county, GOP in Clay County, we are in total agreement. And we discovered, obviously, as we all did during COVID, and since then, just another reminder of how important local elections are. And then you get your property tax bill, and it's like, how important are local elections? So we decided as a county party that we are going to be unafraid to get involved in our local elections. And so, but to your point, there's resources that you've got to have to be able to do that. But we're working closely with our county clerk, to find those programs, and then trying to figure out some walk programs. And I just went to the GOP technology conference last Saturday. Great information there as well. But we're all in for this. This idea of our county GOP now sort of leading the effort to make sure we've got good candidates for school board,
Right.
city council, whatever, because the time has come, even in a small county like Clay County.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's time to stop being so afraid that the left's going to call us out. Stop being so afraid that the media is going to attack us. Like we're always wincing and afraid of the punch. While Democrats go out there and do whatever it takes to win, and we're afraid the media might call us out on stuff. Like you got to go out there and do what it takes to win. This is war. I'm sorry to say it, but that's how the left looks at this. Until we start saying that we're going to do you don't have to be underhanded. You don't have to break the laws, break the rules like the Democrats do. But we got to go out there and work our butts off in every election and not cede ground to the Democrats.
So
All right, here's what we're going to do. We've got 5 topics left, and I'm going to do more of a quick hit sort of process for these last 5. All 5 of them are topics that our Republican organizations and or candidates need to be aware of, and they need to use to their advantage in their elections. And so that's how we're going to approach these next 5 on Did You Know, or quick hits on 5 topics you should be aware of, because you could use this against your opponent or use it for fundraising, or use it to attack the Democrats if you're the Republican organization in your region. These are all topics on which the left or Democrats are vulnerable, and you need to be aware of them. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on them, but we're going to go through them one by one. I have a feeling this first one's going to spur a little conversation now. There was a bill that was pushed forward just in the last week down in Springfield by 3 Democrats down in Springfield: Hernandez, Kevin Olakal, and Lillian Jimenez, who want to push a law that in essence would make all prison sentences cut in half. So if you follow how this works, based on the type of conviction, if you're sent to prison, you're required to serve 50% or 75% or 85%, depending on the class of the felony or the details of the case. And so not most of these, unless it's a lifetime sentence, most criminals are not serving the full sentence. That's how it works. There is a bill now that's being pushed in Springfield to make all offenses under that 50%. That means sexual abuse, sexual assault, illegal weapons charges, murders would all be held under that 50%, which means if you've watched any of these episodes and you saw just the horrible story of AJ Friend, and how he was killed by his parents, this law would set his parents free. His father was sentenced to 30 years in prison, but he would be set free after only serving 15 under this law. That's how ridiculous this measure was, whereas currently he'd have to serve 85% of that sentence, which means 25 years. So you're talking about these horrible child abusers, murderers who will be set out 10 years earlier than they would, set free 10 years earlier than they would under this law. So what's the summary? Because that's a lot of detail and no one's going to pay attention to that much if you're putting out an email for fundraising or a text message for fundraising. The summary is simply this. Pro-criminal Democrats, far-left progressives in Illinois want to cut all prison sentences in half, including for murderers, child abusers, rapists. That is what this bill is, and that's what Democrats stand for in this state. If you're a Republican, you should absolutely be using this against your opponent. Do you stand with these 3 Democrats? Do you support this bill? You need to put them on record on this bill. If you're a Republican organization, you should be putting out an email, a text message, raising money off this crazy progressive bill. This is a huge opening for us, but so far, it's been crickets. Nobody's even noticed that the bill was even filed, and I aim to change that right now. We should absolutely be using this for our favor. I'll open it up if anybody has thoughts on yet another crazy pro-criminal bill by the far left in Illinois.
Collin, is this Lisa Hernandez or Barbara Hernandez?
This is Barbara Hernandez.
Okay, I was
House
gonna say
bill.
it was Lisa.
It is
Lisa.
for everyone to be aware of. It's House Bill 5219.
I was gonna say if it was Lisa, she's the chairwoman of the Illinois Democratic Party. We could have ran wild with this, but that doesn't sound like a bill even Lisa would support. So
either way, though, it is 3 Democrats who have filed a bill in Springfield, and we absolutely need to use it to our advantage.
Good.
So it was filed this spring and it hadn't been called yet. Yeah. No, I mean this is a prime example of this is their agenda. This is their agenda in Springfield. It is to be sympathetic to criminals. These are probably the same people that at the end of their sentence would now be called justice impacted individuals. Because God forbid we protect victims. And this bill, I feel the same way about everything else they've done this spring. Where are the people that used to shout for victims of domestic violence, victims of whatever? Where are the victim advocate organizations when we need them? Because this is what these people want to do. They want to take away victims' rights. A person who murders somebody or whatever, should not. Their family should not have to, worry about their sentence being cut in half by some, stroke of a pen in Springfield.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is obviously aligned with their agenda and what they're trying to push, and it is absolutely we are the party. If you want to be messaging, then you got to message this: we are the party that cares about victims. Republicans care about victims. We care about fairness. The Democratic Party has abandoned that at this point. They are fully pro-criminal, and we absolutely need to talk about that.
It's crazy. It's like that bill that was pretty much, I think they dug a hole and buried it like quickly. The one where I think it was Justin Slaughter. He was pushed in that legislation that would basically hinder the police from pulling over vehicles.
Yep.
Like even if they didn't have plates on, and then you had to drive 25 miles an hour over the speed limit before they could actually pull you over. Now, we did use that, Collin, to your point. I had the suburban race, and we pointed out the fact that, just pointing out the craziness of the Democrats' legislation that, because remember, suburban areas, they've got all kinds of neighborhoods that have 30-mile-per-hour speed limits. And then they have signs up, watch out for the kids, and, kids are playing or whatever. So one of the lines that we used was that, they would basically turn our side streets in front of our homes into a racetrack, and our children would become obstacles on that course. So, yeah, there's again, it's there's so much nuttiness that they put out. If somebody compiled that and put out that through, and I think the Republican Party should take that one up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's yet another sign of the extreme progressive agenda. We always got to keep coming back to that. The extreme Democrats in this state. All right, keep it moving. Second one here. Democrats will tell you, as they have been telling you, including their mouthpieces in the media, don't believe your eyes. Illinois is not losing people. We are not losing residents. And yet, I'm going to give you 3 examples in just the last couple months here of proof that is not accurate. First, the American Community Survey came out with their population estimate, and that population estimate showed that Illinois yet again lost residents, which, by the way, Democrats are going to say the ACS is never accurate, but they drew their maps based on the ACS. So they can't say those maps are never accurate. They literally use them to draw the legislative map. So that's total BS. And that came out and said, yet again, Illinois has lost residents. 75% of our cities, towns, and villages lost residents in 2025. But there's new things that came out. Just this week, Cranes and a few other outlets reported that Illinois ranks last in the country at keeping our wealthy individuals. The affluent here leave Illinois 2-1. For those who come, we lose 2. Wealthy individuals, those are income earners that pay a significant amount of taxes to the state. And if you look at our outmigration, the total number that was estimated that we lost in 2021 and 2022 was almost $10 billion in lost net or lost net AGI or adjusted gross income. That is ridiculous, and that is outmigration again. Finally, last one here is in that same study that was reported by Cranes, we are 3rd worst in the country, yet seniors leaving the state. So while Democrats tell you over and over that no, we're not actually losing residents, we have stats, we have proof over and over again that people are fleeing this state. And it is outmigration doesn't play for us as an overall topic in our campaigns, but we absolutely should be talking about how the Democrats their crazy policies are leading to this, because every time someone asks, why are you leaving? It's crime, it's cost of living. Every time. That's why they're leaving the state of Illinois. And it is proven by these stats.
This reflects something I've harped on before, Collin, is that amongst the outmigration in the state, a lot of the people who are leaving the state are the only people who can afford to leave the state. So there's a class disparity here. If you're an affluent person who doesn't want to pay Illinois' tax rate or doesn't need to live in Illinois for whatever purpose, you can just get up and go. But if you're a working stiff who's here because the jobs are here in Chicago or any other part of the state, it's very hard to leave because you really, frankly, can't afford to pick up your family and move to Texas or, God forbid, Florida. Never move to Florida. Bad idea. But in any case, like if you're a working stiff or a lower, a poorer member of Illinois, you're not going to be able to leave. And those are the people hurting the most here. Let the rich leave. Who cares? But it's the working people who are suffering the most.
Chris, who should care are those working people, because the taxes don't go down. It's not like any of these school districts or municipalities, they're not able to lower their overall ask from the taxpayers. So when the wealthy people leave, they're still asking for the same amount of money, which means it's those lower income, middle income working households who now are going to pay more money to make up for those people leaving. So I understand your point about let the rich leave, but guess what? It's the middle income working families, lower income households who pay when the rich leave. So actually, I think
my only point is that they're going to leave anyway, Kyle.
But I think you should care that they leave, because it's the people that we represent, the working families, who end up paying when the wealthy leave.
In any case, the class disparity is certainly prevalent, and it needs to be addressed by the Republican Party, because, again, we keep trying to cater. We should kind of cater to the upper class, and they haven't been voting for us for the past 12 years. So let's reflect that by reaching out to these working people who are stuck here in Illinois. We're under the Democrats' policies. That's my only point.
Fair. Next one is very similar to the point Chris just made, which is in Cook County, the air quotes progressive assessor, Pritzker, it came out this week, has misclassified hundreds of properties, missing over $444 million in value. And I say, let me add some caveats to that. The Tribune, this was an analysis done over 9 months between the Tribune and Illinois Answers. Their project was a 9-month investigation. And they made clear they just stopped looking. After they got to almost $500 million, they just stopped looking because there were so many. So it's not just $500 million. They found $500 million and there's plenty more, where Kagi and his office missed when properties either increased in value because of building new construction or because of major improvements, and Kagi's office didn't catch it. And so here's the situation where those with means who could afford to build new or build on to improve their homes aren't paying higher taxes, and those without means are having to now eat a higher percentage of taxes. When we look in the south suburbs, where a lot of these lower income households, minority households, are paying huge increases in their property taxes, a big reason why is Fritz Kagi and his office are completely incompetent, and they're not even able to value properties accurately. And so this is hurting lower income homeowners. Yet again, we're seeing that progressive agenda where their incompetence and their inability to run government is hurting the very people that they claim they're trying to help. Again, it's a quick hit. Y'all might not have thoughts on it, but it is yet again another proof that the progressive agenda hurts working families.
Take out Kagi. 2026. That's the goal. Democratic
Next
primary,
one.
Republican general election. We're doing it. Gotta have
Next one here. This one's quick. This one's easy. But remember how down in Springfield, when Democrats were balancing the budget, they were saying, oh, don't worry, this won't hurt working families. We're only raising money or raising taxes on businesses and sport books. This won't hurt working families. Well, we all know when you raise taxes on like retail, that's just going to be passed right to working families and their costs, raise their cost of living. Sports books, now here we go. Look at this. We all said it was going to happen when Democrats raised taxes on sport books. Well, here we go. DraftKings has said they're going to implement a customer surcharge in Illinois to make up what they're losing because of these taxes being raised on them. So yet again here, costs are being raised on working families. Now, you don't have to bet on sports, so you could just say, I'm just not going to bet anymore. But it's yet again proof positive that when Democrats say, oh, don't worry, this won't hurt working families, it always finds a way to get to working families when they raise taxes in Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, does JB think that DraftKings just fell out of a coconut tree? I mean, sorry, I had to use that line. But yeah, no, I mean, we say that in Springfield all the time. He's totally out of touch with the fact that a tax on an industry or a business, even something like this, and yeah, sure, people don't have to gamble, whatever. And you can have your conversation about what you think about gambling, but the reality is a tax is a tax. But here again, now this industry is not going to just bow to the will of JB Pritzker and the Illinois Democrats and say, well, they're in a really fiscally tough spot, and so maybe we should just take this tax and not pass it on. No, they don't care. They're going to pass it right along, just like eventually, local governments are going to pass on other taxes or whatever. I mean, it's nothing exists in a vacuum just because Springfield does something. And so this is not the only example of a tax that we're going to see, or a surcharge or whatever, because the governor thinks he operates on an island in Springfield. It's ridiculous.
Everyone's just gonna do what he says.
Well,
Right.
they always try. The Democrats always make those promises of like, "Hey, we're not going to raise taxes on you. We're just going to raise taxes on them. You know, big business or a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever." But you know, if they increase taxes on them, that just gets passed on to the rest of us. You know, maybe not directly, but you know, if you own like a chain of grocery stores and your tax rate goes up, then you got to find that money somewhere. So the cost of the groceries is going to go up. They just pass it on.
And
Well,
again,
let's be real here. Again, we just had the topic about how Illinois is worst in the country at losing our wealthy individuals. And yet here we go in November, there's a referendum on the ballot asking if people want to say, let's do a 3% surcharge on millionaires to lower property taxes. Is that going to increase the rate of outmigration amongst wealthy individuals or decrease the rate of outmigration? So you can say we helped you, but then when more of these wealthy people leave and you lose $10 billion that could have been taxed in this state, who pays that bill? It's all the rest of us. All right, we're supposed to be doing quick hits, so let me go to the next one. In Illinois, unemployment. Our economy yet again has worsened in July. Our unemployment yet again rose in July. So the University of Illinois System Flash Index fell again for the third month in a row. Our unemployment rates went up 0.1 of a percentage point. We are now at 5% in the state of Illinois, which is 0.9 higher than the whole rest of the country. So our unemployment rate is among the worst in the country. It's now 0.7 over what it was a year ago. And yet you've got Pritzker out there going, look, our economy's great. Everything's just fine. Yet our unemployment is almost 1% worse than it was a year ago. And it keeps getting worse every month. We've got to call him out on this. We've got to hold Democrats accountable for this because for whatever reason, I know why, the media just keeps running the spin that everything's great, even though Illinois is 48th, 49th, 50th in almost every economic ranking in the country. And yet somehow Pritzker and the Democrats are just let to get away with it. And we know, Jim mentioned some of his clients who are running in suburban districts. You know, all those Democrats are going to run TV ads and mailers saying, we lowered your taxes, which is absolute total bullcrap. They did not. They did the opposite. But no one's going to know about it unless we hold them accountable for it.
Right.
All right, last quick hit, and then we'll close down. Actually, I think I said 4. Hold on, did I get them all? I said 5, but it looks like there's only 4. So apparently, no, that was 5. KG, sports books, and economy. All right, that was all 5. So there we go. I can't count. I guess it's time to close down the episode. As always, at the end, we have a couple fun segments. So the first one here is our guests, our participants can nominate people that they think deserves kudos and praise from the week, or maybe who deserves scorn for the week. These are our OG and Clown of the Week nominations. We have some fun with the titles, but you guys don't have to use that. I don't want to get you in trouble. But anybody this past week that you think deserves a shout out in Illinois politics, or you think deserves some scorn for doing something pretty bad in Illinois politics and they should be called out for it, what do you guys think?
I think one of the Clown of the Week nominations should be Katie Stuart for just now kicking off her campaign when she's in one of the tier 1 races on the legislative side. She should have been working a long time ago.
Yeah. It's a valid one for sure.
Do I have to do Illinois politics exclusively? Can I do Clown of the Week as Cori Bush for getting smoked in her primary in
There you go.
Missouri?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Illinois. I mean, the
Backwash
progressive agenda is
on
clearly
Cori
not
Bush.
working too well as some of these far left Democrats are losing their primaries.
Yeah, what are we up to? Newman lost in 2022, and then Jamal Bowman, right? He lost this year.
Yeah.
And then Cori Bush lost this year. So I mean, we're down to 3, cuckoo bananas people out in the, in Congress right now. So let's just keep getting those numbers up, guys. Come on. Good work, Democratic primary voters.
I mean, we always say Brandon Johnson is a permanent nominee for Clown of the Week, so we
Yes.
of course have to make sure we mention that. So Chicago's mayor is always on this list.
Our little crew that we talked about earlier, the Republicans for Harris, definitely Clowns of the Week, no doubt.
Yeah, we definitely ripped on him hard last week in the nominations, so we can just leave it at that, Michael. But you're not wrong.
All right,
It probably deserves a mention.
Yeah, so
Anybody else have thoughts? I mean, so it's not politics, but I'll say once again, the Chicago White Sox, they fired their manager, Pedro Gaffal. They fired a couple other coaches at the team, but let's be honest, 21 game losing streak, an organization that doesn't care about winning, they should also just be permanently listed in the clown of the week category.
So in line with what Michael just said, it's a clown car, and it's loaded with Republicans for Harris.
There you go. Just the whole list. Just take the whole list and put them in there.
Put them all in there.
I like it. All right, we had some fun. Anybody else have thoughts? I think we covered it. Everyone got their thoughts in if they had some. All right, so here's where we close down the episode. Everyone gets a chance to close down with any final thoughts that they might have from the week that was in politics. Jim, why don't we start with you? Any final thoughts you have?
Sure. Well, I guess the silver lining in moving up the petition passing is that we're going to have a lot of people, especially grassroots people, who are going to be out there circulating petitions and kind of tilling the soil a little bit. And I think that's going to be helpful to our candidates in November.
Good point. I like that.
Mhm.
Chuck, go ahead. What are your final thoughts for
Yeah,
the
no, I was just agreeing, Jim. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of it. Same vein, we got to recruit candidates. It's got to start with that and then build a good group around them to support them.
I know you wanted to talk about Desi Anderson. Give her a shout out maybe in her race that's happening in your region.
Absolutely. I was making notes about some of your comments today. I'm sure she's getting fed this good information. Really good stuff you're talking about that we've got to be out talking about.
Yeah, Desi's working hard in that race, so we're
Yes, she
really
is.
hopeful that you guys pull that race off.
Great job.
All right, Michael, what are your final thoughts for the week?
You're saving Collin, the other Collin, for later, I guess.
He beat you at least.
Hey, that's all right. That's all right. I don't know. What was I going to say? I mean, I think that we just got to take advantage of this environment. There's a lot of opportunities out there. I still stand by my statement that I think Walsh was the wrong pick. There's a lot of material that we can use against Democrats up and down this ballot based on some of the things that he's done and said. And I think it also, his record also draws attention to a lot of the issues that we have in our state. There's a lot of similarities there. So if they're talking about it at the federal level, that just means that we can tie some of our whack jobs like Katie Stuart right to him.
There, Chris, I know you would disagree with the Walsh choice being a bad choice. Why don't you go next? What are your final thoughts?
So my final thought was going to be just that. I disagree with Butler that the Walsh choice was a bad choice. I think it was a good choice for the Democratic Party, and it's up for the Republicans, both locally and nationally, to try and figure out what that contrast is going to be between the Republican ticket and the Democratic ticket in this upcoming elections. We can't just go into November talking about tampons in women's bathrooms, and we can't just keep talking about horse semen. As funny as it might be, we can't go into November just talking about tampons and horse semen, guys. This is the reason why Republicans lose these races, folks. So that's what I'm going. Figure out a real contrast here. And finally, the White Sox did fire a manager today. We are free. The chains have been broken, and now we just gotta wait to win more than a game.
I mean,
so
unless we could fire the owner, I don't really see anything changing there, buddy.
let's go Brewers, Milwaukee, baby. Let's go.
All right, Moseley, you brought the heat this week, buddy. Give us your final thoughts.
I got two things. I think first is this: the Illinois Democrats are at least generous, not only with our tax money, but they're generous in the fact that they give us endless material to talk about with voters. The Democrats tee things up for us time and time and time again, issues that matter to regular working people, and we have just got to be unafraid to talk about the issues and motivated to get out and do it. And I know people, especially on this call, are doing just that, but we've got to get together and take advantage of the fact that we have got a strong chance to perform really well across these districts in Illinois. Other thing I have to say just really quickly is, hey, it's State Fair the next several days, and so I'm going to be at the State Fairgrounds today, tomorrow, and we look forward to seeing you all hopefully next week on Thursday at GOP Day at the State Fair.
Agreed. And that's going to be my final thought there is actually not just next Thursday. I hope to see you next Wednesday. We're going to be recording our Smoke-Filled Room podcast next Wednesday night at the State Fair. We're going to be in person at the President Lincoln Hotel in downtown Springfield at 8 o'clock to record and a special SFR After Dark. I don't know if they're going to let me smoke in the historic hotel, so I probably won't get to have a cigar, but we're going to have drinks. We're going to have a fun discussion, have a fun time, and it is open to people who are down there for Republican Day to come join us for the evening. Lane will put some details up on screen if you want to join us. We'll be putting that information out, but come out and join us for an in-person taping of SFR, for a special SFR After Dark. Have a feeling that if people are drinking and enjoying themselves, who knows what we're going to cover, who knows what we're going to say. It's probably going to be a pretty fun episode. So come join us next Wednesday down at the State Fair. As Collin said, come to Republican Day at the State Fair on Thursday. We'll see you all there in person. And until then, we'll catch you in the future on the Smoke-Filled Room. Thanks, everybody.